It says we are now live streaming.
Almost, just one sec. Okay, now it's ready. Thank you.
I can't get to the Zoom. All right. Thank you, everyone. Well, we are all here in person for the November Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. And I want to thank Heather. She was going to chair the meeting because until yesterday at 3, I didn't think I was going to make it. So thank you for stepping up and offering to help. Yes. We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to try to be as timely as possible, but get enough information out for questions and answers for the presentations. Let's start with roll call.
Yes,
Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. I'm such a paper person. Let's open it up for public comment, and correct me if I'm wrong, public comment is about any topic of the meeting today or
Any topic that doesn't already
an agenda. Right. And I don't have my computer, so I'm going to rely on if there's anyone here virtually that wants to speak.
We do have
Chris
one.
Ogren has his hand raised
Thank
from
you.
COIC.
Ready? I will bring him over.
He's being promoted, so he should be moved over. There you go.
All right.
Hello there. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
my
Chris.
name is Chris Ogren. I'm a housing coordinator with Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, and I'm responsible for a program that we run that's called Housing for All. And I just wanted to drop in today to mention that next Monday, November 14th, we're going to be hosting a discussion fully virtually about affordable housing bonds. We've got some panelists from across the West Coast, representation from Seattle, Oakland, and then Portland as well. And we're going to be having just a general discussion about affordable housing bonds, doing some community education, and kind of learning from peer local governments about the successes and failures that they've experienced with them. So if I'm just gonna, I'm gonna send a flyer to Dina to share out after this, if that's okay. And it's gonna be a recorded event. So if you're not able to attend on Monday, but are interested in learning more about the discussion, I'd be happy to share that after the fact. So just wanted to make everybody aware of that. And thanks again so much for having me.
Thank you for that information.
I just want to mention that I represent our group on that Housing for All, and so I will be sitting in on that. And I can report back out if anyone can't make it or you don't have
That would be
time to
great.
review it. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Mhm.
You're like Counselor Campbell. You just go everywhere.
In fact, I am in that meeting as well.
That's awesome. Any other?
We have other public comment. Michael Nelson from the Sazan Group. I may be mispronouncing that.
And could we turn up the
I can
volume for
barely
the
hear.
speakers? I could barely hear Chris.
It's the dial.
It's the
Okay, Michael, you should now have the opportunity to speak.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. Hi, my name's Michael Nelson. I'm with the Sazan Group. I'm also in Leadership Bend 2023 class. Our group wanted to present this morning and just give a quick update. Our current capstone project is looking for ideas and recommendations for how we can improve affordable housing here in Central Oregon, and are looking for opportunities and possibly existing programs that we could potentially support with the manpower of a 7 to 10 person group of various professionals throughout the area. And just wanted to introduce myself, and if anyone does have any recommendations or potentially ideas that we could help support, I would love to get your feedback. Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Yes.
We have some
to
feedback.
attend that Monday meeting and Housing for All and listen in on that as a way to kind of get some ideas. I believe your group did the accessory dwelling unit program last year, if I'm
That's
not-
correct.
So thinking about a housing bond might be an excellent thing to try. So just for some ideas, maybe sit in on the Housing for All's meeting on Monday morning.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
And can you maybe give Dina your contact information in case one of us thinks of an idea at 2 in the morning? We can just
Absolutely.
direction.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It kind of sounds like a concert in here now.
Yeah, it's a little loud for
Okay.
us, but it's nice to hear them.
Any other public comment, Dina, online?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Anyone here in the live studio audience? I was up late last night, so this is what you get. Awesome. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Did everyone on the committee, and Ian, he is joining us virtually. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from October? All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, or do we need some? Yeah, I can make a motion.
Yep.
No comment.
A second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional clarifications or questions about the minutes? All right. All in favor of the minutes, please raise your hand. Ian,
Ian is raising his hand in favor of
Okay.
approving the minutes.
that is all approved. Great. Thank you so much. I think I just do this every meeting, that we're going to do a conflict of interest declaration for the entire meeting items. And so we're going to do it the quicker way. If any of you have a potential or actual conflict of interest on the discussion topics today that we'll be going through, just raise your hand and then we can make a note of that in the minutes.
It seems like I always have a conflict. One of the funding presentations today is, or ones that we're going to talk about, is the core community land trust Simpson parcel. We're a kind of a co-applicant, co-developer with them on that project. So I think that's the potential. And then I don't get any financial gain regardless of what this committee recommends. Is there any other piece I'm supposed to declare? I think that's it, right?
That's it.
Okay.
Oh
my gosh.
Well,
I had it. Yeah. Correct me.
Sniper.
No, that's it.
close. We were so close. Or were we close?
No, that's it. You're close. You've got it. It's
Oh.
the potential financial impact to a business with which you're associated. So thank you.
Matt.
I have a potential and an actual. One of the presenters, Core Community Land Trust, for the Cressida 8th Street properties, I am representing a couple of those home buyers. So I will be receiving financial compensation from the decision potentially, whatever that may be. And then potential is Core Community Land Trust. I may work with buyers in the future.
So I have a follow-up question on that one for you.
Sure.
This decision today would result in a recommendation to City Council. Is that correct, Lynn and Rachel?
It is.
Okay, so you said it was an actual conflict, but because this decision is a recommendation only, it would still be a potential conflict. So I think you may continue in the discussion and deliberation, but you may also recuse yourself.
Well, yeah, the Poplar Community SDCs are still potential.
So an SDCs, if you have a financial interest in an SDC decision, those are decisions of this committee, and that would be an actual conflict. So you could not participate in that discussion.
I don't have any actual with the Poplar community yet.
Okay, so it sounds like you can continue with that disclosure. Thank you.
All right, then they're all potential. And yeah.
Ian, I see your hand up.
You're on mute, buddy.
Hold on. I know. Last month he
There we
was.
go.
How about now?
Yes, there you go.
Great. Thank you. Madam Chair, I do not believe that it is an actual or potential conflict of interest, but I was one of the panelists making recommendations for the county on the Simpson parcel. I do not believe that is an issue, but wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
That does not sound like a potential conflict of interest described in the statute, so you may continue.
Allison.
I was just gonna bring up that our firm works with Core Community Land Trust on the Simpson project, but I do not have any personal potential financial gain regardless of the decision.
Okay,
I think it's potential conflict, but
okay. Heather.
I served in the same capacity as Ian, so I'll just state that for the record, even though we know it's not potential.
Great. Always a lively discussion.
Yes.
I'm glad I did that. All right. Rachel, can you start us with the SDZ exemption request from CORE and set that stage for us?
We're actually,
Amy.
Oh,
We've had to mix things up a little bit.
okay, thank you. Okay,
There were some staff changes. Yeah.
all right.
so this is Core Community Land Trust for their Poplar community. It's in Southwest Bend. It's being developed in partnership with Housing Works, as Keith mentioned. It'll include 7 permanently affordable homes. These are goal net zero energy home ownership units designed as 2-story, 3-bedroom, and 2-bath homes. So the water is Avion. And you can see the breakdown, I believe, there with parks, $58,898, sewer for the city at $39,669, and transportation for $64,883. The total for the city would be $104,552.
Would you like a motion? Okay, I move to exempt Core Community Land Trust from pending City of Bend system development charges of $104,552 and to authorize staff to take all actions necessary to complete such exemptions, including signing loan agreements and related documents without further approval. If exemptions are not exercised before any expected increase, the increase will be added to the total exemption. And I think I have to do 2 different motions, correct?
Correct.
Yes, okay, so that one's a motion. Any second?
So we have a motion and Heather a second. Any additional questions or discussion? Miss anyone? All right. All in favor of the motion as stated, please raise your hand. All right, it is unanimous. Thank you, Ian.
And should I move?
All
the
in
next
favor?
one?
You- Yeah.
Okay. I move to recommend that Bend Park and Recreation District Executive Director or designee waive Core Community Land Trust from pending Bend Park and Recreation District System Development charges of $58,898. If waivers are not exercised before any expected increase, the increase will be added to the total waiver.
A second.
We have a motion and Mandy with the second. Any additional questions or comments on the second motion? All right. All in favor of the motion as stated, please raise your hand. All right. We're all in favor. So
One
all
down.
yeas and no nays. Thank you so much. Thanks for putting all that together. Okay, Rachel, are you still the person for the funding presentations?
I will bring that up. Amy's gonna get us started and then I'm gonna finish it off and Lynn is actually gonna jump in too. It's gonna be all 3 of us.
Okay. I'll just sit back and
I believe you have the slides though, is that correct?
I know. Yep, I'm bringing them up.
We just wanted to provide a brief orientation or just a reminder about the construction excise tax. This is the first time, Lynn's coming over, that we'll be bringing some funds forward from this. It was established in 2020. It was implemented in spring of 2021. It's part of the Bend Municipal Code. It funds programs for housing and support services, and it is 1/3 of 1% of the permit valuation on commercial and industrial improvements.
Rachel, if it's okay, maybe I'll just jump in right now and talk about this and sort of where we are with collections. Is that all right?
Sure.
So ultimately, what you all need to know, and Barb doesn't know this yet as our counselor liaison, is that this fund is underperforming pretty significantly. And that's due to a number of reasons. One of them has to do with that delineation between residential and commercial. And you all know that in some cases, residential is counted as commercial. And when we made projections about what this fee would actually bring in, the folks who were doing those projections got that wrong. So they counted some of the residential that actually counts under commercial code because it's multifamily in the projections. Those units will never touch or be touched by this tax. That was very clear in all of the guidance from council when this was passed, that residential units were not subject to this tax in any way, shape, or form. If they are, we have a completely different sets of rules that come into play, and including part of that going back to the state to then come back. So what has happened is, in addition to our projections being a little off because of that commercial residential differentiation, then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, commercial and industrial construction like tanked for a little while. We're still sort of waiting to determine exactly what that new normal looks like for us. But those two factors together meant there was a significantly lower amount in the coffers for this fund than what we had originally thought. So with that said, and a recognition that this council feels very strongly that this 30% AMI group is very important to serve, and that as we all know, is one of the hardest groups to serve. Council determined that there was additional funding along with leadership that could come into this fund from ARPA. So what we have done is met with a combination of the construction excise tax, or CET, and ARPA funds, met that initial threshold of projections that we were looking for, which is roughly $500,000. So that's kind of what we're working with right now. But it's important for you all to know that that is two different funding sources, and that at some point with council, in council goals or otherwise, we will be talking about revenue more generally. That's part of what you all have been working on for a number of months. So there will be some staff projections, some staff sort of reconciliation, I'll say, and different discussions on how we can make up that difference, if that is in your interest and council's interest as we go forward. But I did feel like it was really important to clarify. Our CET funds are about 100,000, a little over than that, but we're using 100,000 as our big broad number. And there's about 400 in ARPA funds.
For the sake of these RFPs, are we utilizing the $500,000 number as the coffer to play with then, even though that the funds are coming from two different sources?
Correct.
Yep. And then when you look at that $100,000 fund, the state requires that half of that go to housing related service, or not housing related, housing related
Programs.
programs, and then the other half go to services. And it has that 30% AMI requirement. However, that's really only that 100,000. So you have a little bit of flexibility with the ARPA funding
So we're essentially looking at 50,000.
that must go to housing related programs.
Got it.
Yep. And
50.
Housing related programs is in like services?
it just needs to be housing related, but the other portion of funding can all go to services. So
Housing related programs at 30% AMI or below.
So housing programs are what you all would think of as sticks and bricks, right? That's really the definition that we have looked at this with. The state definition is a little bit different than that, but we felt like for clarification, that's really what we're funding. Sticks and bricks, units, production, 30% AMI. That's what we're looking at for that first 50%. Housing programs is what the statute says and what our code says. And so that's what that is intended to be. The other portion can be services. What's important to note also is that that entire amount can go to housing programs and sticks and bricks. That's fine. What you can't do is put that entire amount towards services. There has to be that 50% to housing programs. I think at this point, the staff recommendation is to keep that 50-50 split between housing programs and services. that is within your discretion.
So Lynn, can I ask a question? My memory of this was in part because we always felt we were underfunded for services. And so when this came up in that discussion, it was to get us more money to go to services. Am I remembering that correctly?
That is a portion of it, yes. And that was what according to state law, when construction excise taxes are created, as we did in 2020 with this fund, and it only touches commercial and industrial, 50% of that must go to housing programs as defined in the statute. That other 50% is completely discretionary. So council could have taken that because it's commercial and industrial permits and chosen to do it for any number of other things. That's where we created that services bucket and felt really excited about having additional services money to provide, because as you all know, that's typically our most competitive funding category. So yes, that's sort of what that was seen. And to my knowledge, this may have changed in the almost 2 years since we created this. We were the first, and I think the only jurisdiction in Oregon to have a construction excise tax that is dedicated to 30% AMI services and under. Nobody else has done that. So once again, good job being first. We'll continue, I'm sure, starting to pave the way for other jurisdictions in really important services like this. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, typically all the CET would need to go to 30% AMI or under, but you are working with ARPA funds. So you do have a little bit of flexibility there. That's just to make sure that you are aware of that flexibility when we make deliberations. So 100,000 of it again is CET, 50% of which must be applied towards housing related programs, and 400,000 is ARPA funding. We are really at risk with regards to our timeliness for this year because we have so much program income. That's $606,834 for CDBG. And we only have $340,000 in requests because CDBG is so difficult for people to work with. So we'll figure out something, don't worry. But just be aware of that. And, you know, it has to meet that national objective below or below 80% AMI and align with our con plan goals. And then we have $1 million for affordable housing fund requests.
Right.
Yep. So that's what we're working with as you hear the presentations today and ask your questions, and then we will move forward with deliberations at the December meeting.
I think this is the biggest pot of money I've seen since I've.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
And we hardly ever say pot of money. It sounds like there's so much.
Isn't that exciting? So y'all, this really feels like, you know, this additional funding is the culmination of your work, not only in creating additional revenue, but also in encouraging council to think of housing as one of their first priorities.
Yeah.
That's what caused this to happen, is those two factors together. So well done. Give yourselves a pat on the back.
That's exciting. I will say you have distributed more money over the last 2 years. You just don't realize it because it was coming and going out so fast. We had those CARES Act dollars, and then this is also ARPA dollars. So these are like short, you know, infuses of money. So we do have to think longer term with regards to that sustainability.
So are there constraints on ARPA funds that?
It does need to be applied towards underserved communities members. So, you know, you want to lean towards that 30% AMI for sure.
Does that have a technical definition? Underserved community?
It does not.
I think we, you know, our goal would be to take your will, your political will or policy will, and try to ensure that we can implement that to the best way possible with each of these subrecipients. So we would work directly with these subrecipients to ensure that we could get that language into their sub-agreement or into this sort of administrative file that we create for each of these projects to make sure that it is eligible. We don't see eligibility issues with the proposals that are in front of you today. Is that fair, Rachel?
Yeah, there's none. I have no concerns.
Heather.
Remaining dollars for which have not been no requests made. Will we deal with that at a separate meeting?
Yeah, we'll probably have to put out another RFP, but we might like really target some projects that we know could use some infuse and see if they're willing to work with those CDBG dollars.
Mhm.
The real crux of the issue is the prevailing wage requirements.
Right.
People would meet for lots of things, but it's a big administrative hurdle, not for necessarily the developers, but the contractors. Really, it's a pain in their butt.
And what we have discovered, I think locally, and any of you can really rebut this if you see that this is inappropriate, but the wage is very consistent between prevailing wage and market wage. There's not a huge jump between those two. And what we've heard from all of the folks we work with, it is the paperwork that's the hassle. And when folks have 3 years of contracts in front of them and a ton of work, it's really hard for them to choose to take on additional paperwork, especially I'd say contractors, where that may or may not be their favorite thing to do, right? They want to sometimes just get out there and build the things. And so we're super aware of that. And we'll continue to sort of look at alternatives at the state level to try to make sure that this is the most functional prevailing wage program that can exist, but that is the challenge. And also it just triggers a lot of weirdness. Sometimes Keith, I'm sure, can go on and on.
Weirdness.
Ian has his hand raised.
Ian has a question, everybody.
Not as much a question, just to absolutely agree with what Lynn is saying. That's certainly the challenge that I see across our industry and our region. Wages are consistent, but the administrative load is so much higher that folks are unwilling to take it on. That's all.
Is that a federal requirement or state or both?
No, prevailing wage is state level controlled, in my understanding, through the legislature and Boley.
So Jason Croft.
That's correct.
was just elected. We should probably have a discussion with him.
So indeed, yes. And I think we can continue to talk about this topic in future meetings if y'all are interested in it. Certainly something that we're watching from our perspective to make sure that we can continue to deliver both council goals and state goals around all sorts of things that touch this issue.
Great. And we might- Housing Works is dealing with this.
Yeah.
So we might be able to, learn from their experience a little bit too, and just get their expertise on.
Yeah, I mean, if it's at a state level, that's a heck of a lot easier than trying to do something at the federal level.
I think isn't CDBG
I mean, CBG is a federal regulation.
Bacon, and for residential, they defer to they defer to Davis Bacon for residential, but if you go commercial, then it's the state's weird book. So it's
A weird book.
but the Davis Bacon federal, they're absolutely right. There's no that general contractor will tell you there's no premium they add to their job for doing it. It's market. When it gets to the state Boley, then it's you can't say that anymore. But it's interesting stuff.
Well, I just never like to overlook the legislative aspect if there's something that can be done to make something work better. And if we have really good examples of why it's working. My experience with Jason Croft is he's a very reasonable person and he might be able to move something forward. He's been very effective in his legislation.
Yeah, my understanding is there are efforts at the state level to retool a little bit. And again, we're sort of tracking those at this point. We don't have policy direction to pursue anything, but we'll keep you posted. I think we do have a somewhat tight time schedule today. So if this is a topic y'all are interested in, let us know and we can bring that back to dig into further.
Yes, I'm sitting here kind of
Getting nervous.
Sorry.
That's all right. Usually we
With
make
that, let's move on to the presentations. So Veterans Village is up first, and I will put your slides up.
And then we try to keep the presentations to 5 minutes or less. And then we have a question and answer period. So you can stay up there and answer any questions that we have. Welcome. Good to see you. And please introduce yourself. Because nobody knows you.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, I'm Eric Tobiasen, president of the Bend Heroes Foundation. We're the developers of Veterans Village up north of town. And we're here today to talk about our expansion project. Thanks for the opportunity. This is a wonderful program that you guys have. I remember 2 years ago with Councilor Campbell and Councilor Abernathy in a room trying to figure out how do we get more funding for homeless projects, because there really wasn't a homeless aspect to AHAC, and the CET passed pretty quickly after that discussion. And it's great to be here to be requesting some of those funds. To see the whole process work as a citizen was really unbelievable. And so thanks everyone for all your hard work, including Councilor Campbell. So Veterans Village, for those of you who aren't familiar, we're a transitional shelter. We have 15 cabins there in a community building. We opened on Veterans Day last year in 2021, exactly 1 year after our approval was on Veterans Day in 2020 under House Bill 4212. It's a public-private partnership with City of Bend through AHAC, Deschutes County, and two nonprofits, mine and Central Oregon Veterans Outreach, who is operating the program. They're experts at dealing with homeless veterans, and so they are the operators. Our objective is to end homelessness for the veterans in Central Oregon, and we think we can do it. We're making a dent in it after 1 year. I'll talk about that in a minute, but there's still an acute need for more capacity. Let's go to the next slide. So we offer case management. We, COVO, offer case management on site, the wraparound services that you always hear about. Understand what the barriers are to housing and make a roadmap to get back into permanent housing. Create the transition plan. They're measurable. We're looking for short, medium, and long-term goals. Everybody sticks with the program. They find housing. We've had a couple people leave the program because they weren't willing to follow, let's say, the plan and our code of conduct. But in general, things have been going very well out there. We have some behavioral health opportunities that we work with the county, the VA, obviously physical health. All the veterans have primary care physicians now, connecting with lots of benefits, job training. Most of them have found jobs. It's really been incredible to see what's happened in 10 short months. Next slide, please. And those are some of the successes. We've had 6 veterans move into permanent housing out of the village. I call it graduating. Whatever you want to call it, it's success. It's brilliant to hear the stories firsthand. People that were living in the woods, coming in, having a safe, warm place to have community, to eat, to get connected with VA benefits, VASH vouchers, all these things that get us back into society. And it's just been incredible. You know, people finding jobs. One veteran has been saving up for a Harley Davidson. Okay, maybe not the top priority in housing, but he was able to, you know, with housing, save some money to create some, we'll call that financial independence. And there's a lot more success stories. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this was the village after our first snow last year. Looks like that again this week. And we've had 15 of these shelters. Some of you helped build these last year. The shelters were all built by volunteers. We only had contractors build the decks and the roofing because JBAR-J and Heart of Oregon Youth Corps weren't allowed to go up on ladders. But it was principally built by volunteers. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is our layout and where we plan to do the expansion. At 7, my proposal is for 7. I know it says 5, but the budget is for 7 around this site. And we've got a greenhouse going in here that's being donated, working with the city building department on that right now. Let's go to the next slide. So that's what our shelter unit looks like. It's just 12 by 12, nothing massive. It's insulated, heated, and air conditioned. We added this summer because of all those days over 100 degrees. We've got a toilet, a sink, table, closet, and it locks, you know, and that's good security for their personal belongings, and it creates good personal security emotions. Let's go to the next slide. Where's the timer, by the way?
We have about 1 minute left.
Okay, cool. So the scope, yeah, we're going to add 7 cabins to get us up to 22. This is exactly what Clackamas did at almost exactly the same time frame. They started with 15. They got their feet underneath them. It started to work. They added 7. So we're going to try to do the same thing. It's just easy stuff. Excavate and fill, add some utilities, build the 7 cabins, put some pavement down to have the whole perimeter paved and landscape it. We know how to do this. We already did it. We did it in 1 year, 15 cabins with a community building from bare dirt. We're just, you know, asking for a year to do it because we're hoping we don't have to do it in COVID experience where there's no contractors, no labor force. And then let's go to the last slide. So budget's $400,000, about half of the shelters and half is the site preparation. pretty consistent with the costs we actually experienced for our actual site prep and our actual cabin construction. But there's some inflation in here and there's some labor in here. You know, where we use volunteers, I can't count on volunteers doing it. If we can, that would be great. We also want to get this done fast. Okay, that's all I had. Questions?
So much.
Yep.
Yes, go ahead, Heather.
Why 7? Why not more?
We've got a carrying capacity. We can put more up on the hill. But that's, we have to get over a lot of rock to do it. I think we'd want to go in increments. I love thinking big, but, you know, I think the capacity to manage the residents, you know, you need to grow it, you know, linearly. I'd be a little bit nervous doing too much.
Thank you. Did you have a?
We could probably fit 10 in the footprint, and that would add nominally another $90,000 to the budget. 490 to 10. Any other questions? Yes.
Were these 15 original cabins consistently full since they opened?
We have 12 that are permanently occupied. There's still 3 that are available. And, you know, we just have some capacity and yeah, it's a load barrier shelter, but there are some veterans that aren't yet ready to, you know, have, let's say, code of conduct and, you know, responsibilities and those kinds of things.
If you weren't able to get the full 400,000, what would that do to the project?
Yeah, we had that question last time around. And my answer then was, well, we're going to do whatever it takes to get this done. If we get nothing, we're still going to do it. We'll just have to figure out alternative sources. I think that was maybe a naive answer back then. Because remember that was kind of my first rodeo. But I believe that this time around, I think we'll probably hold off. If we get enough to do the site prep, we'll do the site prep. That way, when we're able to shake more trees, you know, doing the cabins is pretty darn quick. You know, if you can do it with kids, you can do it with a contractor and, you know, and a really short period of time. So I think if we didn't get the full funding, you know, we'd still definitely barrel forward with the site prep.
Allison.
Just to follow up on Joanna's question, if there's been three available right now, but have they been vacant for a long time? I mean, do you?
Yeah, they've basically been vacant since we finished them. We'll call that March, April. Let's say, so they've been vacant when the weather's been better. And the demand typically would go up in the winter time frame.
And if I may, and this may be a stretch, but is there any overlap or collaboration with other organizations within the city for temporary use of those units? Or, I mean, I just don't want them sitting there not being used and then building more. I don't know, that's probably a stretch because you've got your parameters and it's all veterans and.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean,
maybe just
when I see a warm bed, you know, empty.
Right.
Well, we don't want that, right? And there's 1,000 or more unhoused people in our town. I think that's something that COVO and maybe HLC or some other organizations can talk about. But yeah, there are programs designed for veterans.
Right.
But the decision-making process would be
Yes, I understand.
complex.
For sure.
But it's, I mean, it's an extremely valid point. Extremely valid point.
Any other questions? I don't want to miss anyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And thanks for funding for the first round. Appreciate it.
It's really successful out there. Snow or no snow.
And next we have Council on Aging, Stephen.
Podium or? Either place. It's totally up to you.
Where I can see my slides.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Stephen Remington. I'm the Director of Development for the Council on Aging of Central Oregon. I've been here about 1.5 years in this job and been focusing very much on this project. So next slide. Our mission is to advocate for, empower, and guide older adults and their loved ones to live with independence and well-being. Next slide. These are some of the ways that we touch the lives of the seniors in Central Oregon. Meals on Wheels is probably our largest brand, if you will. And we do all of the meal preparation for Sisters and Lapine and Bend from our Bend site. Congregate meals, which were grab and go during the COVID period throughout the pandemic, and we're going to reopen that with a soft opening on November 23rd. And then by the new year, we'll be doing 3 to 5 days a week of meal service, which addresses isolation and loneliness as well as the proper nutrition. We do information and referral, health and nutrition education, information and referral. We also work with a lot of partners, Latino Community Association, Neighbor Impact, Volunteers in Medicine, Partners in Care, and others. We do Medicare counseling, SHIBA. We're doing that right now. We have several counselors hard at work. And we also pay a portion of the salary of the Latino Community Association's counselor, Ana Bueno, who allows us to then reach out to the Latino and Hispanic population with the SHIBA, which is Senior Health Insurance Benefits Assistance. And then some legal assistance, case management, minor home repairs, in-home care, personal care, the respite care that we provide both for the families of elders and the elders themselves. And then options counseling, caregiver support, that sort of thing. So a lot of people don't know all of the services that we provide, but there's a listing of most of them. Next slide. So we purchased the building, which was the former Bend Community Center, in 2018 for the purposes of creating this senior services center. It was built originally in this brick building that you see was the LDS church, and then the additions on the side were administrative offices and an addition on the back of the building that we're working with. Next slide. That goal was $2.4 million to rehabilitate that facility. The first and most important thing was the kitchen upgrades. This is a recent picture of the kitchen as it is about 2 weeks ago. We're still putting in some windows and doors there, but it was a mess. It was barely habitable, failing appliances, unimaginable grout deterioration, poor electricity, no pantry service, no dishwashing services. So that was an immediate need. Next slide, please. Thank you. As well as the ADA ramp. On the left, you'll see what it looked like prior to, and then on the right is the new ramp and some of the landscaping that we've managed to put in. And that was an immediate $135,000 that was raised during phase 1 for both the kitchen and the ramp. Next slide, please. So phase 1 also included all the permits, architectural fees, planning, and capital campaign design costs. So it was nearly $500,000 at that point in 2018, 2019. COVID hit, and we had a struggle to keep the campaign on track and gain traction. Next slide, please. So phase 2 was $711,000. That was the SunWest estimates for the demolition, rehabilitation of the client-facing areas, replacement of electrical system. We even needed to put in a new transformer and electrical pole, replacement of HVAC, plumbing, new restrooms, ADA restrooms, framing, windows and doors, which we've waited for months and months and months. I just got a door on my office yesterday. So very, very excited about that. Next slide, please.
You have just under a minute left.
Okay.
I know it goes fast.
So, okay. So this is a stage area. If you've ever been in that building, there used to be a stage here. Next slide. And this is the picture on the right is what the rear of the building looks like as of a week ago. Next slide, please. So phase 3 work was over $1 million. And that was installing the roof was a major piece of that, more HVAC because of the anterior areas that we needed to address, and also extensive construction in the community rooms and more doors and windows. Next slide. So this is what that grand hall looks like, and that what was the former stage at the rear is the fireplace area. That's what we call the socialization room now. Great. So the JTMF Foundation came forward, that's okay, with $750,000, and we also received $327,840 from ARPA funds through Deschutes County for that phase 3 finishing. So what we have left are a lot of the change orders, things that didn't make it into the final cost estimates from SunWest, and stonework, casework, finishing, that sort of thing, which amounted to $135,000. And then next slide. This is the source of the remaining funds that we're looking for. We have a match, so any of the dollars that we're able to get up to 5,000 through AHAC would be matched, that first 5,000 to the Maybelle Clark McDonald Fund. Then we've already received On Point. We've secured Oregon DHS monies, and we've secured individual donations. And so we're moving right along to finish that building. This is, next slide, please. This is 5% of the entire 2.4 million that we have left to finish. And we were one of those people that had to decline $250,000 CDBG grant, if you'll recall. Perhaps some of you were involved in that because of the paperwork and the
I do recall. Yeah.
Not that SunWest doesn't pay its subs prevailing wage. So thank you for the opportunity to present to you, and be happy to answer any questions.
You've done an incredible amount of work. Yes, Rachel.
First phase, the city, they did get CDBG funds for the appliances.
That's right.
Right.
That's right, we did.
Yeah.
That was part of that original 135,000.
Mhm.
So.
Well, it's the only senior citizen, I think, sitting up here. Thank you very much.
No other questions?
Did you have your hand up, Mandy? No.
Okay,
Ian? Nope.
thank you.
Covered it very well. Thank you so much. And that's incredible what you've been able to do with that older building. That's like a real estate before and after. Awesome.
All right, so next is Core Community Land Trust. Just want to make sure I bring up the correct. Is Jackie in the?
She is, I just moved her over. She's rejoining as a panelist.
They're all say, oh, here's Cressida. These two are the same.
Take it away, Jackie, and just let me know when you want me to move to the next slide.
Okay.
Oh, it's not showing? Oh, sorry. Need to share.
Well, while we wait, thank you all for having us. CORE has two presentations today. The first being funding for our Simpson community, which will be the largest homeownership community the city of Bend has ever had. And we're up. So next slide, please. So most of you know CORE Community Land Trust. But in short, we're bringing over 50 units to the city of Bend in the next couple of years. We typically serve households under 80% area median income, with our average income at 65%. However, we do go as low and lower than 30%. Our first community had 40% clients who were at 30% area median income. We serve only first-time home buyers, and we give preference, given the legal opinion we recently received, to Housing Works clients, so we can serve even lower income clients, as well as first-generation homeowners whose family does not have that generational wealth. And we can give preference to local employees to ensure that the housing supports our local workforce. Next slide, please. So the Simpson community is CORE's largest and the city's largest affordable homeownership community. It'll have over 35 units of net zero permanently affordable single family homes. Below you see a site plan. These homes will be 2-story, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and 3-bedroom, 2-bath to serve family housing needs. And it's located for the first time, affordable home ownership units on Bend's west side that have walkability to Century Boulevard. Next slide, please. So these units will initially serve over 150 people in these over 35 homes. Because our model is permanent affordability, every time the home resells, it is deed restricted and must be resold to another low-income family. So within the first 75 years of the home, we will serve over 500 people. Our homeowners build wealth. They earn on average over $80,000 in equity in their home. And these are net zero, carbon neutral assets for the city of Bend. And I think it's important to note that we're so appreciative of the city of Bend's continued investment. Typically, the city of Bend has provided just under $100,000 in each core home. This request is asking for nearly half of that. So you get more dollars for doors. Next slide, please. So we are moving right along with our timeline. So our timeline in this request is so that we are able to submit to the state, Oregon Housing and Community Services, this upcoming January. The state requires us to have this project fully funded, less their gap funding. And so this request is the size and scale it is because we want to be able to bring these units to the city of Bend as soon as possible and would not want to delay this project. We are planning to purchase, we have City of Bend funding for to purchase the land from Housing Works this upcoming January. Pre-development, our entire development team is already selected and working on site plans and working with the city. Infrastructure, the site is challenging, significantly challenging. So infrastructure will occur through August. And then we are actually selecting our general contractor by the end of the week. We got several strong proposals, and we anticipate building will actually be 18 months so that our homeowners will move in towards the early side of the second half of 2026. Next slide, please. So project budget. As we said, we have the funds secured from the city of Bend. We also have ARPA dollars from Deschutes County secured for this project. We have a pending grant award with Community Frameworks SHOC funding, which is HUD pass-through funding. And our request to you all is for $300,000 in pre-development. We know we will need this because of the how difficult the site is to develop. We are going to need that additional $300,000 to pay our development team and to work on studies and reports. The second request is for the $1 million in affordable housing fee funds. This is essential for us not to have to be over budget and take more than a construction loan than we need to. And then we were also encouraged to request for the CET funds, given who we typically serve. And so that we would put towards the infrastructure costs. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Jackie. The timer's just about to go off. I didn't want.
Perfect. I'm all done.
Oh, wow. You're great. Thank you so much. There we go.
And I just will share that CORE did send us the legal opinion that vouches for their preferences that she mentioned. So we do have that legal opinion if any of you would like to see that.
Great, thank you. And then what was the amount for the CET funds?
500.
500. Right. Any questions from the committee?
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Is my memory correct that this is property that the county had extra and then charged a lot for?
Oh,
as opposed to doing.
So CORE paid is contracted to pay $250,000 for our portion of the property, which is 3.32 acres.
Right, but it was the land that the county owned that they made extra, but rather than donate it, they charged market rate for the property. Am I remembering that correct? Or a little less than market?
You want me to step in, Jackie, a little bit? I can.
Sure.
since I'm right here, the county put out an RFP for development of the site. So it was kind of a blanket. They wanted affordability, and it's property that I don't know exactly how long they've owned it, but a long time. And so it's that, it's that narrow strip right across from.
Yeah, no, I know where it is. Yeah.
So there's challenges with the soils, like they mentioned, and so we're still negotiating with the county, but the market appraised value before all the weird soil conditions happened was like 2.8 million. So that's not what was proposed. So they accepted less.
Oh, they did.
And then, what that final price is when all the soil stuff and all the negotiation done is, we think we know what it is now, but we're still working on it. It's not signed.
It's not sold yet. It's not owned.
Correct. Yeah. It's still owned by the county. Yeah.
I have a question about kind of the soil type of thing. I know when they did the building for the OSU, some of the property owners had some damages from the blasting in their foundations. And I know that that same area is very graphically different. So you will have to do some leveling. How do you foresee that going?
So hi. Without a doubt, there are some issues with the soils which have affected homeowners. I think whether or not that is caused by OSU or by any number of other things has not been determined. And then I think that I will leave it up to potentially Keith and Jackie to talk about how their site plan reflects some potential challenges with the soils. But I did want to put it out there that the challenges that those homeowners are having and sort of how that has not yet been determined in terms of cause also.
Liability cause. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can jump in. So Core and Housing Works has done a soil study to identify exactly where the bounds of that unstable soil is located. On Core's parcel, which I'll speak to for this proposal, we will not be building or building near that small area on our side that has any impact from that soil. So we did redesign our site plan after that soil study. We also got a second study done. So we put additional borings into the ground to identify exactly where that line was. So we can feel confident that we are not creating any further harm for the homeowners which we build.
Okay, thank you. Both.
You have anything to add?
Oh, well, I can briefly tell you what we found on our parcel on the part. Just to give you kind of a 50,000 foot level, it's what we found in our soils test. It was 50 to 60 feet of old cinder pit stuff that would extend potentially past where we had our testing done, but that hasn't been verified. So potentially owners that are to the north have soils that are part of that problem. And so I can't say what those owners, I've talked to two of them. I can't say what they'll do or what they can do to shore up stuff, but they're most likely on challenging dirt that will continue to give them problems. So that's the unfortunate reality that we know.
Whether or not.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. They're on fill that well, we've looked on our piece that we've bored and it's we would have to put pillars to support structure on sections of that land, like 30 to 40 feet down, 50 feet down pillars, like you're building over an ocean, similar to that, so there's history of mining and stuff like that. So that's why it's not just typical,
It's not likely a phase 3 that adds more units.
Yeah. So Jackie's got her plan. Our plan is we're not putting a single structure on that either. It's like a parking lot, that's engineered just to be a parking lot. So that's what it is.
Well, good information. Okay. Well, there's no additional questions. We'll get to our last presentation, which is also Jackie. Rachel will get this slide up for you.
I am.
Thanks, Rachel. You can, for time's sake, jump to that next slide. So CORE is under construction on our Crescita community. This is located on 2500 Northeast 8th. These are 1-bedroom, 1.5 bath with a flex space homes. The affordable price is $185,000. And all of these home buyers have already been selected. Next slide, please. So to account for rising interest rates, our home buyers have signed their purchase and sales agreement. We anticipate COO in Q1 of 2023, and then having our homeowners close shortly after. Our home buyers here are a mix. 4 of them are under 80% area median income, and 1 is under 120% area median income. We are quite proud of the diversity of our home buyers here. All of them actually are from our local workforce. I'm working for local Bend businesses, and they've all qualified, or they're all required to qualify for a traditional mortgage for that home price, and they still cover their closing costs and earnest money. Closing costs, as you may know, is upwards to $12,000 as we speak. Next slide, please. So we're coming back to AHAC with an additional $40,000 in requests for down payment assistance for these buyers. When these buyers were selected, the interest rate was 2.85%, which allowed them to get a much larger mortgage than they can now. They all locked in at 5.75%. And so what we've experienced is folks' buying power going down, and we are coming to AHAC for the additional $40,000. So all of these buyers who've been selected and working hard on mortgage readiness for the past year can close and purchase homes with us. Without these extra funds, at least one buyer would have purchase would have to be rescinded. Next slide, please. So we've done our hard work to ensure that these home buyers have the extra cash. They're all now enrolled in individual development accounts. They also, we've set 185 as the lowest price point we can set and still pay back our loans. And so in terms of down payment assistance, you can see the breakdown. 2 home buyers need all of it in terms of what the maximum of what AHAC provides, and 1 home buyer needs $15,000, which is why our original request for $75,000, which we have from you all, is short by $40,000. Next slide, please. That's it.
Interesting. Thank you so much. You were right on time.
You done this a couple times.
That's right. I know I was going to ask how they were able to lock their rate and get those set so long ago and then not use that until April. And I was going to ask Matt how that was going to work, but I think you just clarified that. But do you have anything to add?
They use Oregon Bond, and Oregon Bond allows you to lock in 6 months ahead of time.
Oh, 6 months. Okay. That's the saving grace right there.
Do they have any ability to like refinance when rates potentially change? Yes, I'm seeing a nod. Yes.
Oregon Bond does not typically let you refinance.
It doesn't.
You can't refinance into an Oregon bond loan. You can refinance into a standard Fannie Mae land lease program. It's an option.
Okay.
As a takeout to the bond.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would refinance the bond loan into a standard Fannie Mae option.
So I drive by that project almost every day, and all of a sudden the homes are up. It looks really, really good. It's so exciting. Yeah. Nice work.
Thank you.
8th, and it's at the circle. Yes. Counselor Campbell.
Most of the home buyers will be locally employed. Is that what you
All
said?
of them. All of them are locally employed.
Thank you.
Could you use more than 40,000?
No, as Matt knows, all of our home buyers are, they're signed their PSA. And so we know we ask for exactly what we need and no more, recognizing there are other requests out there.
Any other questions?
This math makes sense to me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. What's going on out there? I'm so distracted. It's like shiny things. Thank you.
Prices have gone up about $250 for the same loan amount from the beginning of the year until now.
The cost for the loan.
Yeah, $135,000 loan
Mhm.
from where Oregon Bond Rate Advantage was at 2.875. It would have equated for a principal and interest of about $560 a month. Right now it's at 6, which is $809 a month. So it's a difference of $249.29
Per month.
per month.
Per month.
Just in,
It happens fast.
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, we're doing pretty well on time. Thank you for being patient. Our goal was to have the Cassie come up here from the Environmental and Climate Committee and do a presentation on the home energy scores. So thank you for waiting an additional 5 minutes for us to get through our presentations. Is there anything else to add to the introduction? Lynn is walking up to the microphone, so.
Before Cassie gets, yes, I just wanted to make you all remember the sheet before you go.
Can we get that sent to us?
Yes, I could definitely send it to you, but I just wanted to point out, and this is what I will point out in my email, that our ask, sorry, I don't know why it's selected. Let me see.
Okay.
Like fix it either because I'm sharing. For the services, keep in mind, we have $500,000 for CET funding. We have over 2 million in ask for services. So just keep that in mind as you score. Oh.
Thanks, Rachel.
I think I presented earlier and said that I am the sadness to Lynn's joy.
And thank goodness for you. I don't think your sadness is quite the right approach, but I do appreciate that you ground me when I try to get a little too crazy. So
Oh, it's Rachel's turn to talk.
no, not at all. Thank goodness. Rachel, hopefully y'all know, and Amy and Dina are the ones who actually like make this program work. I just get to stand up and talk and say fun things and take credit for all their work. But so did want to introduce Cassie Lacey from our staff. She is a member of the city manager's office and is the staff liaison to the environment and climate work that we're doing. Cassie has been working with her committee on the home energy score, which is why we're here today. So you all weighed in to council a couple weeks ago. It's all blending together, how long ago that was, but it was recently on feelings about the home energy score. And what I would ask you is, as Cassie goes through this presentation, to think specifically about implementability. This is your opportunity to say whatever you're going to say about how you feel about the home energy score. That's fine. Think about if you hate it, that's okay to say. What I'd love to hear is the reason for that, if that's the case, and how you would suggest that change is made to make this program work for the city of Bend, if council chooses to go that direction. Say whatever you want to say, but think about that. We don't like it because, if that's your statement, or we think this could change and make it better, if that's your statement. So hopefully that makes sense. I think we're really looking for mechanisms to make a score program work for the city of Bend, and you all are the specialists on implementability and how we get from where we are today to a better world, right? Because you know those dynamics and what the pieces are behind the scenes of how housing transactions happen. So that's why you're here, is to think about that technical side, and why Cassie wanted to present to you, to really hear the nuts and bolts of what you could recommend to make this program better. I hope that makes sense. I'm really trying hard not to say, don't say this or do say that, but I do want you all to lead. If your answer is, I hate it, I hope there's a but after it, and you can talk about why and what could be improved out of the program. Does that make sense?
Right, just kind of brainstorming like we did with the commercial excise tax. We were coming up with that. Like, what is it going to serve? What does it look like when we were coming up with that new source of funding? Yeah. right? Kind of like that.
Yes, that's correct. And then Cassie, I'm presuming that you will talk a little bit more about timeline and what comes next as well, but we hope to sort of package, I think you're doing a whole bunch of outreach this week and over the next week or so. So she'll talk a little bit more about what's next for this program. Staff are going to do our best to write down what you say and then be able to figure out what's next sort of as we work with Cassie and council to move forward.
And does Cassie have more than 5 minutes for the presentation like we had for the?
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't want you to think you had to cram it all in 5 minutes. Sorry, Eric.
Bring your friends up as well if they would like to, or y'all can hang out until the time is right. Totally up to you, no pressure.
Should I put my own slides or can I send them to Dina? Is there a way for me to plug in and run it myself?
Let's see if Dina is still on. That's a great question. Dina, I'm sorry. She kind of fell sick at the very last moment. Oh, there she is.
I'm
So
here.
she's doing everything possible from home.
I'm here.
buying
What do you guys need?
Oh, Dina, I was just wondering, do you, because I sent you the slides, do you have the slides or is there a way I can plug in to run the slides myself?
Okay, I think what you're asking me, I can't hear you very well, but I think what you're asking me.
Slides.
Slides.
Do you have the slides for this presentation?
Yeah, let me
Dina?
see if I can pull
Okay.
them. Yep.
Or do you have a Wayland for me to plug in?
Probably.
And I do have them. I can share my screen.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much, Dina. Okay.
Of course, of course, of course. Let me just pull them up. And because I'm doing this from home, I want to make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing. Hold on. If I can find a share button here.
Down at the bottom.
Hold on, I gotta switch this with this. I did find your presentation though, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's on. I heard it.
Okay, well, while Dina's pulling that up, just for some background for anyone who's not
There you go.
familiar, the Home Energy Score is an initiative of the Bend Community Climate Action Plan, which is a strategic plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that the City Council adopted in 2019, which was a result of the city adopting a climate action resolution back in 2016, a long planning process that went into developing a community climate action plan. So the Home Energy Score is one of the actions in that plan. And what we also learned in that process was that the largest area of greenhouse gas emissions in the community comes from energy use in our buildings. And of the different building types, specifically residential buildings is kind of the largest contributor among buildings as well. So the Home Energy Score is seen as one of the effective tools we have to try to get at helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from existing buildings. And so that's kind of the history of why we're even talking about the Home Energy Score today. And the Environment and Climate Committee during this biennium, they were tasked by the council at identifying kind of priority projects we have to implement this biennium.
The Home Energy Score is one of your top priorities. So go to the next slide.
I'm having a hard time hearing. Does she want me to go to the next slide?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, it's not the on. One of them would have low battery, so maybe check the other.
So battery.
You know what?
Dina, do you want to just email it to me? and
I'm
then
gonna
I-
email it to you, yeah, because I can't hear her. So let me just email it to you really quick.
Maybe we do have to come up here. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. You must have burned them out.
I'll share my screen. Mhm. Sorry, there might be a delay in for this email to come through.
Okay, you're gonna
Hey,
pull it up.
Rachel, I just sent it to you because I'm having a hard time hearing any of the guests in the room, but I just sent it to your email.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I'll just, oh, go ahead.
Ask a question.
Yeah.
Regarding this is an action that was listed in the action plan and should we understand then that we've made a commitment as a city to implement the program in some form?
Yeah, I mean, yes, with the adoption of the Community Climate Action Plan in 2019, we said, we will do this set of 42 actions that are part of this.
So there's not, unless we find barriers that would prohibit us from implementing it, it's expected that we implement it.
Yeah, I would say that's correct. I mean, like any kind of longer term strategic plan, like you can only go so deep into feasibility when you're putting that plan together. So there is a recognition that we will move forward with all these programs, but knowing that each one is going to have to be looked at individually and kind of figure out those nuances.
Thank you.
But yes, the expectation is, and kind of that decision about like, are we is the city committed to moving forward with this stuff? That decision was made with that 2019 adoption of that plan. Okay. Oh, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so a home energy score is a standard home energy assessment tool that explains the energy efficiency of a home through a replicable and affordable methodology that assesses a home's components. It contains a numeric score that reflects the energy efficient rating, estimated utility costs, and suggested measures to improve the efficiency of the home. The main idea behind a home energy score is really that it's supposed to work like a miles per gallon rating for a vehicle. It provides information about how efficiently a home uses energy for prospective buyers, which can help inform their purchase decision. They provide transparency around the efficiency of the home and the ongoing energy costs required to maintain the home, ensuring that the homeowners can factor the energy costs into account when making that purchase decision. In the bigger picture hope of an energy score program is that it will lead to a greater investment in voluntary energy efficiency measures in Bend by making the information more readily available and easy to understand by the whole community. So next slide. So this shows an example of what a home energy scorecard actually looks like. So what you see on the screen would be like a document, and this is what people would actually be expected to obtain. So on the right side of the screen, you have this example is from Hillsborough, but you have the front side of the scorecard, which shows the energy costs and the actual score of the home. And then on the left side of the screen, you have the back side of the card, which shows various information, but primarily the priority energy improvements, which have a 10-year payback or less for this home. Next slide. The Home Energy Score program uses a specific home energy score tool that was developed by the U.S. Department of Energy. They recognized a need to have a standard assessment to easily compare energy use across the housing market across the country. So they spent many years creating this tool. And cities can become partners with the US DOE in order to establish policies like the one that's being proposed. And then in Oregon, the Oregon Department of Energy supports this program so much for Oregon communities that they have actually formed a proxy partnership with the US DOE in order, and the state DOE takes on all the requirements of the partnership on behalf of Oregon communities. And they're doing that because they wanted smaller cities in Oregon to be able to have access to this program without some of the requirements that you would normally have if you wanted to have a partnership with the US DOE to use this tool. The ODO, the Oregon DOE, has also hired Earth Advantage to work statewide to support home energy score programs in Oregon communities by providing some of the necessary services like assessor training and quality assurance. And so by creating a home energy score program here, we're able to leverage this tremendous amount of resource and expertise that has gone into building this program. Because of that ODO partnership, the state of Oregon has more home energy score programs than any other state. So the cities of Portland, Hillsborough, and Milwaukee all have existing programs, and several other cities are also currently considering them. And then elsewhere in the country, cities like Minneapolis, Austin, and Berkeley also have programs that use this tool. Next slide. So there have been a few studies in the last few years that have attempted to measure the effectiveness of these programs. The most recent one came out earlier this year from the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and they had some interesting findings, including a 1-point increase in a home energy score was associated with a 5.5 reduction in the odds of a loan going 30 days delinquent, and a $100 decrease in estimated annual energy bills was associated with a 2.3 decrease in the odds of a loan going delinquent. So those are just some findings that kind of show the benefit that people are able, some of the benefits that come from people having access to information about the energy costs of owning a home. And then another study, so those relationships were only statistically significant in places with a mandatory home energy score assessment required at the time of listing. And then another study was completed in 2019 from an association called E2E, which is a joint initiative between the University of California, Berkeley, MIT, and the University of Chicago. And they studied the effects of the home energy score program in Austin, Texas, which is one of the longer standing ones. And they found that requiring home energy scores increased price capitalization of energy efficiency projects. So basically that homeowners, if they had chosen to make investments in their home, they were able to capitalize on that when they went to sell their home, which isn't always true with energy efficiency projects because they can be invisible when you're selling a home. And they also found that the program did encourage energy savings residential investments. Next slide. And then to touch on how the Home Energy Score program supports equity objectives, we want to emphasize that this program is really seen as a buyer protection program. So it assures that people understand the energy costs of the home that they are considering buying and provide transparency about features of a home that are otherwise hidden and may have significant impacts on the cost of owning that home over time. And we'll get to the program details in a moment, but also included in the proposal is a low-income assistance program that will cover the cost of obtaining the score for those who cannot afford it. And there are additional programs outside of the Home Energy Score program at the federal level, plus the city could develop more programs, but to actually support low-income homeowners in making energy efficiency upgrades. So those are separate from the Home Energy Score program, but altogether, the purpose of the Home Energy Score program is really to be like an equity forward program. And so that's something that we just like to make sure that people understand. Next slide. Okay, so that's all kind of like the why behind the program, but this is what the actual proposal is. So the Home Energy Score program will require that all homes that are being listed publicly for sale are required to obtain a home energy score from a state licensed home energy assessor. A copy of the score must be provided to all real estate agents and brokers working on the sale of the seller's behalf. And then while that home is listed for sale, it has to be included in all public listings and essentially just made available to any prospective buyers who are looking at that home. The homes that are covered include any residential structure containing a single dwelling unit on its own lot or any attached single dwelling unit, regardless of whether it's on its own lot, where each unit extends from foundation to roof. So single family homes would be covered, of course, but also townhomes or duplexes or even larger than duplexes if they're in a row and not stacked. So the tool doesn't work with stacked housing types, but anything where you go from foundation to roof would be covered under this program. And then there are a couple of limited exemptions from the program. Generally speaking, the categories of exemptions are sales that occur through involuntary change of titles, and then homes where significant financial hardship is indicated, such as a trustee's sale or a deed in lieu of foreclosure sale. So the code has an actual list of like what qualifies as those exemptions, but it's meant to be limited to really like extenuating circumstances. Next slide. So the proposal includes a recommendation that the city will cover the cost of obtaining the home energy score to the seller of the home. The intention is to structure that low-income assistance program as low barrier as possible. So the way that it works in other communities is that the city actually has a relationship with one of the assessors who goes, when there is someone who qualifies for the low-income assistance program, that assessor goes and just does the score for free and provides it to the homeowner, and the homeowner doesn't have to front any of the money. And then they bill this, so the city then directly pays the assessor at the end of the month for all of the homes that they've scored. So it's been a really nice low barrier program for people that qualify. Our intent would be to set up something similar here. We'll have to, find a partner that's willing to do something like that. But the goal would be to do it that way or some other way, recognizing that, in order for the low income assistance program to be meaningful, we have to make sure to set it up in a way that's going to actually be effective for people. And then for new construction, they have a little bit of an easier path to get a score, to get home energy scores through a pre-construction assessment where the home energy assessor can review the construction documents to get all the information needed. So that way for new construction, they're required to get a score, but they can get that score before they're finished building the house, which is when most of those sales are happening. And then in the event that you have many identical homes being built, like within a subdivision, within the same land division, if they're building many identical homes, same exact floor plan, using that pre-construction assessment, they're able to essentially replicate that score for all the homes that are identical. So they do, if you have a new subdivision with many identical homes, it's still required to get a score for each home, but it's streamlined. So it's, they're not like charged the full amount for each home, and it can happen very quickly. Next slide. So there are several platforms across the nation that host energy scores. We're served by a particular one called the Green Building Registry, which is owned and operated by Earth Advantage. So once a home energy score assessment is completed, the score gets automatically uploaded to the Green Building Registry, and then, which is public. So any address can be searched on this database and their home energy score can be found. The database also hosts like other types of green building certifications, like Earth Advantage certifications are on there as well. It can be used in partnership with the local MLS system if the MLS allows it to do so, so that brokers, when listing the house, can just pull over the listing from the Green Building Registry with the click of a button. So if we were able to set that up here, it also makes it a pretty easy process to get it included on the listing. Next slide. And then as far as oversight and enforcement, the program is proposed as using really a proactive enforcement model that would heavily emphasize education. So the goal of the program is to get as many scores as possible for homes. The goal of the program is not to issue penalties and it's not to issue penalties. Really, we'll only get the benefit if a lot of scores are actually generated for homes. So the enforcement is going to be structured to support that. And the vision for program management is that we would have a staff person who finds people who are out of compliance by reviewing listings, and then they actually reach out to the homeowner who's out of compliance, let them know, and then they provide them with information and resources to help them come into compliance. And so once they get contacted by that city staff person, they have a 15-day grace period where it's not considered a code violation, and it's only after that 15-day grace period where it then gets referred to code enforcement and considered a code violation. From there, it goes to our standard code violation process, which includes an additional 30-day grace period as well. So the soonest time, like there's a pretty long time that goes by before someone would be issued a penalty, and that would be if we did it as quickly as possible. So as far as what the ongoing program management looks like for the city, the work that would need to be done on an ongoing basis really includes identifying those homes that are out of compliance, providing them with the resources and information, being a point of contact for program questions, and then hosting a web page with all the information, and then just monitoring the program overall. So the city does not get involved with the act of obtaining the scores, other than potentially that low-income assistance program. That all happens in the private marketplace. The city's role is really just to do kind of the education and outreach and support for getting these scores done. So that's the overview of the program. And as far as next steps, I don't have a slide, but the date, initially the council was going to do the first reading for this. So it's an ordinance adoption. Initially, the first reading was going to be November 16th. That's probably what you heard the last time you discussed it. They have postponed that to December 7th at the soonest that they'll be doing the first reading of the program. But it's an ordinance adoption, so it'll be a first reading with kind of a hearing or public input, and then a second reading. And then we're also recommending that the program go into effect actually on July 1st, 2023. So there would be kind of a waiting period in between. And one of the primary purposes for that is to make sure that people have time to become assessors, because right now there's not a lot of people who are licensed assessors because we don't have this program in place. But what other cities have seen is that once the ordinance is adopted, a bunch of people go and get trained to be assessors. And we have talked to 4 or 5 inspectors who have already gone through the training, kind of anticipating the program. So we want to give that grace period to make sure the market is ready to support the program before we launch. And then we intend to, as well, before the launch, we even wrote some language into the ordinance about this, is that before the program launches in July, we would have a check-in where we make sure that there are sufficient number of assessors available to perform the services, so that we're not in a situation where right off the bat, it takes people weeks and weeks to get these scores. In other markets, people can often get scores same day or within a couple of days. So that's what we're expecting here. And that's certainly what we're shooting for as far as what we expect out of the program. And then another thing I didn't mention in my slides, but I know it's a question that comes up frequently, is that the cost of these assessments, other markets have seen, it's set by the private market. Other markets have seen them range from $150 to $275. So we're expecting something similar here. We've been kind of putting out there $150 to $300. So that's another thing that we'll be monitoring, is the cost of the scores. And if they were to be dramatically different, that's for like an average size home, like for like a 2,000 square foot home. If they were to be dramatically different than what we would expect, that's something that we're going to be tracking, and we also do not want. And so we would, potentially, take a pause at that time or figure out ways that we could address that. So it's definitely our intention. Those are some of the things that come up about potential unintended consequences. And those are things we thought a lot about and intend to be monitoring closely. So that's an overview. Do Peter and Neil, do you guys have anything to add?
Well, should we start with questions? Hands are already going up?
Yeah, we can start with questions. Right. Peter and Neil are the best at answering the questions, so that they're here to contribute to the discussion. So,
Right, I was gonna have you do that. So we say, hey, you in the plaid.
So I'm on the Environment and Climate Committee, and I want to thank you all for your service on this committee. I did some time back in the day with Jim Long, and the posse, and sat on this crew.
I don't know. I think you were out just before me. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. So I know it's a lot of work, and it's important work. And the stories from the people presenting here, you get to know who's putting housing in the ground and doing it really well. So thank you for that. And then I've been involved in building in Central Oregon for about 15 years now, on the production building side and the custom building side. I'm also a small business owner here with a company in the trades, and now working on developing a market rate middle housing apartment project in Midtown. So a lot of involvement in the community, and 2 years now on this Environment and Climate Committee. So usually sitting on that side, but your side more intimidating. And so yeah, put a lot of hard work and research and undertaking into making sure that this home energy score is effectively rolls out well and makes the best use of the city's resources while accomplishing our goals. So that's my story, and looking forward to answering your questions.
Do you want to introduce yourself,
Yeah.
Neil?
And I have a feeling that this is just a prop and doesn't
Okay.
So Neil Bonspire, I'm the chair of the Environment and Climate Committee. Happy to be here to answer questions. This is something that, as you probably know, there's been conversations about this, and this has been in development since the climate action planning process in 2020. So these conversations aren't new. We've been involved in this and iterating and really trying to strike a balance, because there is a lot of opportunity, and it's proven itself in other markets to find something that's efficient, that's implementable. We could have done much more involved energy scores. We could have created a very custom program, and if this didn't exist, that would have been a really big undertaking. We're really lucky that we have the resources, that there is already an established platform, that it's easy to implement and to be able to do affordably, so it's not a long custom process. It's been a number of years, so we can see the impact of that. So we don't have to be total guinea pigs, which is really nice. But we do have the ability to kind of work through this implementation step. So I'm here to answer questions and help clarify whatever we can.
Right, we might have several, so I'll just start with Mandy, and we might just work our way down. Thank you.
Also,
And sorry, we don't have our name tags.
Yeah,
So
it's okay. And if you all
we'll
run
see.
out of time and have follow-ups, because I know that you have was very good at timekeeping. So if you run out of time, very impressed. You run out of time, we'll have to follow up afterwards, as well.
First question is, how do you validate the scores are accurate?
So the process, if this has happened in other communities in Oregon, has a verification process through the third-party manager of the Home Energy Score program, the Earth Advantage. So they have a verification process for those independent state certified inspectors. So then they can monitor and try to make sure that they're happening as objectively as possible. It's an objective score, but verifying that people's scores are actually what they're supposed to be.
And the way the tool works too, it's like they basically have a bunch of fields and they just go take measurements and input it into those fields. And then there's actually a back-end software that the US DOE created. So the score gets calculated by that. So it's fairly objective. But then Earth Advantage goes, they do the quality assurance to make sure that they're measuring the right things and that sort of thing.
Do you check at a later date? Like, that's what I mean. So like you establish the initial score, and then at a later date, is it validated against the actual use in the home or that?
Good question. Yeah, so the score is based on the house, but not the behavior of the building. There are other assessments that do actually require verification of like, now prove that you're actually net zero. This is not that. This program net zero. But yeah, so this is about the assets, not about the behavior, because that can vary very significantly. If you have a medical device that you're plugged in all the time, just how you're living in a house can affect so it's just based on the assets, not the behavior.
Okay.
So it wouldn't change if somebody moved in.
An electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on the front end, the verification is really important in quality assurance. On the front end, these folks also have to go through a pretty rigorous 7-point program that's administered also. That the quality of the verifiers themselves is up to speed in the first place. Quality assurance is provided.
I'll ask only one more of my other questions so that everybody else has questions. Is there a way, once you get a score, is there any kind of assistance for remediating it? So as in, like, if you have a really low score and you want a higher score because you want the potential for that market value or whatever, is there assistance to remediate that or anything of that nature? Or is it all up to the home buyer?
So
you can go ahead.
I'll start.
Yeah.
You guys can just trade.
Yeah. So the purpose of the Home Energy Score program is to provide a universal data point on every home. So, and that's what I'm kind of a data and analysis geek, and that's what excites me about this is that it's a non-biased number on each house. There are suggestions made that are value-based. Okay, the most cost-effective, and it would be in that example of a score, the most cost-effective, what you can do, but it's not telling anyone what they have to do. So what I like about that is it's a market-based solution to try to achieve our goal. So the home buyer and the seller can make their decision on if they want to make a change, if they want to add value to it, but they know when they start. So there's no, it can be used as a tool to help allocate resources or allocate funding for energy efficiency, but in and of itself, Home Energy Score doesn't allocate funds for solutions, just presenting the information to let people make informed decisions.
And then I think looking beyond this, because this is just one of many steps in trying to provide the best resources that we can and do the best climate mitigation that we can. We see this as pairing really well with other programs. So for example, there's federal dollars through the Inflation Reduction Act that are specifically targeted at low and moderate income households to be making those upgrades. They require pre and post inspection. So this would be very in line with that. So we're hoping that this is one of the many things that we could stack other programs or identify challenges with the building stock or so it's, or if those programs are already available, that the person that took advantage of that weatherization program that they qualified for would be able to not just experience the benefit for themselves, but that upgrade would also be reflected in to the next owner of the house.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to skip the order because I don't want to Miss Ian. So I'm going to let Ian, I see you on the screen over there. You're everywhere. If you're ready, Ian, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and I'm not sure exactly who to direct this comment to, but I'd like to have more information on how exactly will the city determine that there are enough inspectors? Because this is a fairly unusual item where the city is, it would seem to me, the city is looking to see whether or not the market is responding and then changing its behavior based on that. And while I'm not against it, I'd just like to know a little bit more about how is that going to work, because that's a fairly critical piece so that we don't see price gouging in the market. Thank you.
Yeah, so Earth Advantage is like the, third party. It's kind of that third party service provider for various services for this program. They have helped cities calculate how many assessors they believe they will need to meet kind of peak market demand. So they've given us a number. It's 12. They believe 12 assessors is how many that we need. They've given numbers to other communities and those have been accurate. And then because everyone has to be a licensed home energy assessor, it's very easy for us to check for Earth Advantage to let us know like how many people have gone through the training and are licensed. So that's kind of the simplest way we would figure it out. And then I think we would take it a step further by kind of looking into those people who we know are licensed and confirming like, they got licensed, but are they intending on actually offering the service? To what capacity do they think they intend on offering the service? And then kind of our backstop will be hearing reports in the community. So if it starts taking people a month to get a home energy score, I assume we'll hear about it fairly quickly. So that'll be kind of like.
But wouldn't that homeowner then be substantially in breach already by then?
Well, you get your score done before you list the house. So, and scores are good for 8 years. So if you're going to sell your house next year, I mean, not most people don't know they're going to sell it that far in advance, but if you did, you can go try to get it quite far in advance. So it would not be the case that you list the house and then try to get the score. So the delay shouldn't affect your compliance. If you're in a rush to get your home, like we're not expecting it to be that long, if that makes sense.
I agree, but what if it does? What if it does take a long time? What if folks who certainly don't already know that they need this, I would say a lot of homeowners are not going to know ahead of time and won't have planned ahead. How do we protect homeowners from basically surge pricing like we see with Uber and Lyft if there is a run on this?
And appraisals. Okay, so I don't know if you can you hear me? Kind of. Okay. We can look at other examples from how this works. I'm trying to speak extra loud. You see examples in other communities of how this works. So if you're in Portland right now, I just searched home energy score Portland. The first listing was $149 home energy score anywhere in Portland or Milwaukee, and there's appointments tomorrow. So just like for the amount of work and like that market and similarities to here, it obviously takes market compliance, which is why we have a delay built in to try to allow that to happen and send that signal. In other communities, we're just modeling what other communities have done and they've seen similar results. So we're trying to put in the backstop to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. But if it's worked in other places and it's been quick, and I can go on and schedule one right now in that community, that's just the model that we're trying to follow here. We can only do so much without taking the whole program in-house, which I don't think would be a good idea. Maybe.
So I don't know where to look to see you, Ian, but anyway. Yeah, and I come at it from a little different perspective because I'm more boots on the ground and working in the construction field and in the energy efficiency. But these folks already are here. Like you can get a home energy score right now. So a friend of mine got it, and it's like $200 for a normal, typical house. Home RX, which is a big regional company, they're here. Because I'm sort of a geek in this, I take pictures of their vans that already say get a home energy score, like parked in Bend. And then the appraisers and assessors, the Green Savers of the world is kind of a big company based here that works over in the valley as well. The home energy score is actually a less robust program than an energy audit. So they're already tooled up to offer this. People are going through the training. So in researching other communities, the problem was actually not enough assessors. The problem was everyone came on board and thought they were going to be able to offer them. They had too many, and the market ended up culling the herd. So the folks who were able to deliver most quickly at the best price stick around and made a viable business. So while we want to make sure that that doesn't become a problem, my experience already is that we're going to have ample folks, and we're going to have to see how the market sifts out the best deliveries. So that's the way I see it already here in Bend.
Did that answer your question, Ian? I was thinking more, you're thinking of owners knowing that they need to do this. But I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, it was two parts. One, making sure there's enough education out there, and two, making sure that there's capacity to meet when the program needs to be launched. Thank you. That's what I need.
Okay, thanks. Allison.
I'm not sure where we are on time for questions, but and you covered a bunch of mine, just maybe real quick.
That's what I'm thinking.
Accreditation body for the assessors is the U.S. Department of Energy, or in conjunction with the state of Oregon. I'm a little confused as to.
Yeah, I wish I could. I don't know what the training is actually done by the U.S. Department of Energy, but Earth Advantage kind of supports the training program. So I believe, I don't know, Cindy, I know that you have looked at this with me before.
I think I know the answer.
Yeah, because I know they also get a license with the state of Oregon, but they do a training with the US DOE, and then they get a license with the state of Oregon too.
Right. So the U.S. Department of Energy created and maintains the home energy score rating tool. The Oregon Department of Energy manages the voluntary scoring process. Portland, Hillsborough, and Milwaukee, they have mandatory programs, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but it's the Department of Energy created it. Oregon Department of Energy helps implement it, and Earth Advantage helps train and license assessors to do the scoring. It's not an Earth Advantage score. They just train the assessors. So I think that's a good answer or a good question.
They get a license from a state of Oregon agency too.
And they have
systematic, I mean,
it's through, yeah.
And I think Cassie addressed that earlier. There's kind of a formula and parameters for each.
Yeah, it's actually on the Earth Advantage website. They have like the 7-step process that says the exact steps they go through, and it lays out like the US DOE training. I think it's like an Oregon CCB license or something.
Yeah,
so anyway, I could look at that and have the answer perfectly.
Well, I think for maybe production builders and people who are doing this similar product each time, because this is new construction also.
Yeah.
And if there's a system in place where a similar floor plan is going to have, get the same rating, and there'll be some kind of a process to go through for that. If it's done at the state level and the city is not getting involved. I'm just trying to figure out who's going to be the jurisdiction, who's got the authority on some of this. So thank you.
Heather.
Thank you. So I'm sort of thinking about the score as being an intermediate step to meeting the ultimate goal of reducing greenhouse gases, and before that, just doing the remediation that's required primarily probably to older homes and whatnot. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that is the hope. That's kind of the connection to the climate action plan, is that, it's kind of one kind of foundational piece in order to, help achieve our emissions reduction goals.
And then the other primary goal, I think it's good to separate the proxy, right? So this is trying to get energy improvements. The other piece is recognizing the energy burden piece and the consumer protection piece. That's not hoping for something different. Part of that is accomplished with the score itself. So you know what you're getting into. You're not surprised by that when you go into a house transaction.
Yeah. So with that, you know, we've discussed that there's potential benefit to home buyers and understanding what they potentially are looking at. However, I don't think we should ignore the impacts to sellers, right? So I'm kind of really curious about whom in our community largely owns the homes that are likely to receive a lower score. Do they happen to be moderate and lower income members of our community? And what sort of disproportionate burden are they going to have to navigate, whether that's simply contending with a lower score and how that might hinder them in selling their home in a competitive market, or trying to make the upgrades and, you know, deal with improving that score. So whatever option they're able to do in that situation, you know, what are those disproportionate costs and burdens? Has the city and the committee evaluated, you know, that scenario and sort of studied that?
Disparate impact.
Well,
I'm gonna start with not a full answer, but just saying we don't know because we don't have a human. So we don't know the energy performance and the ownership and of every house in Bend. And so part of the value is being able to get some of that information so then we can better target services. But that's just one small piece of that.
We're not able to make any inferences about that?
We know age and we know some ownership things, but we don't know energy performance because it's not always 100% correlated to age. There's very poor performing houses that are, you know, multi-million-dollar houses. There's also very well-performing older, smaller homes like I live in because I've made a lot of upgrades.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think kind of where I've heard this come up in the term I've heard thrown around is kind of stigmatizing older houses. And that's a great one to talk about because I think what's great about the home energy score and why we're going to benefit from it is because there is no stigma to an age or a size or a neighborhood. It's a metric on the house itself. So to Neil's point, if it's so example wise, like if we've got a great big 80s house on Aubrey Butte that's horrifically performing, like we all know them, it can have a very low score, but it'll have a very high sales price being desirable. We can have a quite old home that someone has put the effort into to upgrade it because of their own comfort or their own prerogative. They've added insulation and done a few things, or maybe the furnace blew out and they got a more efficient furnace. So you could have a very old house get quite a good score. So I've heard this stigmatizing old homes thrown around, and I think that's disingenuous about how the home energy score will impact our housing stock because it is a neutral metric based on you see the assets of the house. So it's a great question because we put a ton of work into making sure that this is a fair program and that it's just giving people information and not biasing or stigmatizing any of the houses, whether they're nice high-end houses or affordable lower-end houses. Like I think to kind of the folks who are looking to purchase, we only got building codes, I think, in Bend around 79, something like that. So if you're looking at a house of that age and you see you can't tell from the outside what the people have done to it over the decades. So by having home energy score as the buyer, you know, like, hey, these two are side by side. I'm getting a clear, transparent reading of this one's over here, it's an 8, this one's a 2. I know look the same from the outside. I'm going to be spending hundreds more to own this house because of your heating costs in the winter. That was interesting, you know, that interest rates have gone up and pushed it up $250 on the mortgage payment. You know, my previous bookkeeper was paying over $250 more per month in a late 70s house. And that's affordability issues. That's where I see the affordability benefit of having these scores.
Yeah, I appreciate the reminders to not paint with a broad brush. But if I'm hearing you correctly, we should make no inference that there is any correlation between the age of a house and its potential energy inefficiencies. Is that right?
The advantage of the home energy, so a new house built to code today, today's energy codes and versions are quite good. So a new home will inherently be better. Not all new homes will be the same.
Sure.
And old homes like 70s houses or like the great big ones, we do a lot of work on the ones on our review. That's why I use that as an example, but they're incredibly inefficient and would have typically, unless they worked on them, would have poor scores. But you can't know that looking at the house from the outside. So
sure,
being able to know that, I think, is the critical piece. So typically, if nothing's been done to your house, yes, the whole house will be much worse than. But it's also going to have all kinds of issues. You'll have a bad roof, you'll have a bad foundation, get all kinds of bad things. So yeah, the benefit is being able to give transparency to that metric that we don't have, that the buyer doesn't have now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And thank you for answering my question. I would just encourage thinking about studying some of this to the extent that it can be studied. I think this is a major point of concern is the disproportionate cost burden. It isn't just to provide a score and for transparency, that is one benefit of that, but there's a lot of other sort of benefits and costs that go along with this. And I think it would be helpful to discuss all of those transparently.
What are the other cost burdens you're seeing?
So the ones I just mentioned.
So the one thing I would like to add too is that the Home Energy Score program is not like a complete solution as a standalone. So the Home Energy Score program, of course, it is a problem. Low-income people cannot afford to make the upgrades to make their homes more efficient. The Home Energy Score program by itself is not going to solve that problem. There are other programs that can help to address that problem, increasingly so with the Inflation Reduction Act, because there's big programs in there to help people make improvements to their home, especially for low income. And so the hope is that right now, most low-income people may not even take advantage of those programs because they don't know the efficiency of their home. It's just not something you think about, especially if you're like just trying to get by. It's like hard to really think ahead like that. And so one of the ways that the Home Energy Score can be leveraged is if this information is more easily available. So people get into the home or they're selling their home and then they're made aware of that and it's kind of easy to understand. They will hopefully have an easier pathway to actually taking advantage of those additional federal programs. Another thing we've talked about is that the city, if it was something that we were highly, highly concerned about, the city could double down on some of those programs and add additional resources and capacity to help those people. And in addition to the Inflation Reduction Act programs, there's new EECBG funding is coming through the IIJA Act. So that's going to be not a ton of money, but like $180,000 that the city will get through formula funds that's meant to be put towards energy efficiency projects. So if we wanted to, we could allocate additional resources to saying, okay, if we're going to do this Home Energy Score program and we're worried about these potential unintended consequences, in addition to the federal programs, we could really augment this even more. It would mean more resources on the city's behalf. It would mean more staff kind of dedicated to that. So that's the other kind of trade-off there. But I think that's how the Home Energy Score is meant to be seen as part of a suite of solutions to make the situation better so that people who can't afford to do energy efficiency projects can afford to do energy efficiency projects and have the information they know to even get started, because right now people can't even really get started.
That's great. Thank you.
The affordable housing stock in this town is actually a high example of outstanding energy efficiency. So our groups that are working and asking your committee for funds are doing fantastic work. So those houses, Warren, all those guys, those houses would have a great.
I have to go meet with the NLA at 5, plus I know you guys are also out of time. So I'm going to step out. If Peter and Neil can stay and kind of wrap up the conversation, if that's okay.
We're going to continue with questions, but yeah, thank you, Kelsey.
Okay. And then if you guys want to meet me, because I'll do the presentation, and Aubrey Butte upstairs. I'm sorry about that. They just got,
No, it's.
they got double booked. I'm just gonna repeat the same thing in a moment. Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, I'm happy to follow up with anyone.
Okay, well, this is a great segue because I had very similar concerns. I think I'm the only one on this dais that's on Social Security. And I'm going to say a reason for my concern and suggest changes per Lynn's suggestion. I am concerned that people who have been in their homes for decades own homes that are going to perform rather poorly, particularly if they've never had the funds to upgrade their home over time. And so this is the demographic I'm very concerned about, because I know for myself, I wouldn't have the funds to be able to improve my home. Now, it sounds like there are programs coming up that might make that more financially feasible, but my concern is also the timing. If somebody is, I want to sell my home, it's the only equity I have, I need the money for retirement, I'm going to move someplace cheaper, I need to sell my home, I get this score, it's terrible. What do I do? Do I have to lower the sales price of my home to get rid of it? And then the other issue is, okay, well, you've identified the issues. Maybe you need more insulation, you need X, Y, and Z. Well, how long is that going to take? It's going to destroy the time frame for the sale, right? If the sale is a month. The other thought I had, though, was why isn't this part of the buyer's responsibility? Because they're getting, under their contingency, they're getting a building inspection. Why don't they pay for it? So it's up to them. If they're concerned and want to know, they can always back out of the sale or offer slightly less for the home. I mean, why does it have to be the seller's burden to do this? Now, I can understand if they're doing it a year ahead of time because they think they're going to sell their house a year ahead of time. You know, if their husband has a stroke and they need the money right now, this is going to hurt people. I know. I think that the entire portion of the older part of town is the more affordable areas of town and are going to be negatively impacted by this. And so I have a real concern, like you do, about equity. So it's a real concern. I understand the idea of having every home have this score. I'm an architect. I do subdivisions. I totally get it for the new construction, totally a part of that. I've worked with Earth Advantage, getting Earth Advantage, you know. It's just this specific demographic I'm very concerned will be very negatively impacted. And so one of the suggestions that I have is maybe in the interim of this being driven by the buyer and not the seller as part of their home inspection. And then the second thing is making it optional or voluntary for a year and see how it's working. And then after that year, determine whether you need to make it mandatory or not. So it captures in not just 6 months, but a year to get everybody available to do the work, get the notifications out there for people. They can get their score ahead of time if they think, hey, you know, I really am going to sell my house within this year. And nobody sells a house in the winter, okay? They sell it in the spring. So there's time to get this work done if they know they need to have it. I'm very concerned that not everybody's going to be aware that they need to do this to sell their homes. And I'm also aware in my demographic, I know a lot of people who have emergency medical situations that cause them to need to get money right away and sell their homes. So, you know, I think if you could, I have no problems with the new construction. I think that's fine. And if you're replicating a house, it's fine. But I am concerned about the implementation timeframe and the equity issue for this demographic. So those are my suggestions. Take them or leave them. I think you've got really good resources going on in terms of providing funding for upgrades of homes. My concern is the time frame, because if somebody is at the point of selling their house and they find out they have to do this, there's no way for them to do those upgrades and then benefit from the cost. And I also am concerned that the amount of money it would take to upgrade the house isn't necessarily going to be captured in the sale. You know, it's possible, but it isn't a guarantee, because so much is location, 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 right? And we're talking about the lower area of town. I'm not talking about Aubrey Butte, you know, and it's true, some big older homes are terrible, but they'll always get the money because they're on Aubrey Butte. So anyway, that's my concern. Those are my suggestions.
I'll try
Yeah, that's
to
a lot.
go down. Yeah, I think we both go down now. So on the, this is going to devalue my home, so I have to make improvements. This is one of many things that it's part of a value of a house. So right now, primarily speaking, and I don't want to speak, this is what I've heard from realtors. Primarily, you're pricing a house based on location, square footage, and some measure of quality, which is largely surfaces, right? Countertops, flooring, the quality of those, and maybe the roof, right? So those are kind of the largest things that you can see and price. So this is adding performance into that equation, but it's adding it in as one individual piece of the larger pie that is largely going to be driven by those other things. We know that although this is important to people, which is why it's reflected in having an impact on house sale price, this isn't the leading driver of what is pulling most people in or out of a transaction. So anybody that's selling a house might make the decision of, say, asking their realtor, hey, what are the things that I might be able to do to make my house sell for more? That might be like, you should plant some flowers in front of your house. That
I wish it was that easy.
you should, yeah, you should
Find
change,
a house
you
then,
can
right?
make upgrades to X, Y, and Z, and I think that that's gonna have this return for you. So the home energy score is, I don't wanna overstate its impact on the market. I don't think it's going to, well, we have data that a change in 1 point in the home energy score was correlated to a 0.5% change in the sale price of the house. So that might.
Did that go negative as well? Because all of the data up there was positive. Does that also include a negative price reduction if it was lower than 5?
That was what I implied, but I don't know the details. Like I don't know if researchers or any of those details, but I can share the study too, and maybe there's more details in the math. So this is one of many things, and so nobody's forced to make these upgrades. It's just making those the current operation of the house transparent to everybody else. If I knew that I had something that was non-desirable in my house, and I didn't share that with a buyer in the seller's disclosure list, that helps me if I'm in need, but that's illegal, right? So this is really just like about providing that transparency piece. It's making something visible that wasn't visible before. So I don't think on a short timeline, I think this could be weighed as other improvements can be weighed as an upgrade that somebody makes, but I'm not expecting this to seriously change that process, although it might if you right now, there are amazing incentives, pitch if you're a Pacific Power customer with the Energy Trust to do installation upgrades. So somebody might get this score and see the resource that says this would change your score by this much. Here's the connection to the resource of what that incentive is. There's an increased incentive through the end of the year, and that might actually help them, but they're going to be able to make that decision either way. And then on the buyer side of things, the challenge with that is that this is one small piece in the process. It's not going to be a make or break for a buyer. So if it's already into the inspection period and you find something that has an impact that might, in a market transaction, have an impact of $2,500 or $5,000, that might be something that you negotiate, but that's not something that's going to really provide the opportunity for it to really drive the market in any real direction. And similarly, in the buying process, if you were having to pay to get a score for every house that you looked at, that's looking at a score is much different. If a seller provides a score, it's available to every single person and every single agent that looks at that house But buyer does, it's only available to one person. So it really has a benefit when it's on the seller's side of the transaction.
I think when you get any report, though, it becomes available to
That's
any
true. If they choose
potential.
not to buy the house, then
It stays with the house and it's available for anyone else that's looking for the house. And you would only do it if you go into negotiations on a specific house.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate all that. And you do understand my concern.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I think what about the other aspect of making it voluntary for a year to kind of implement the process and then look at making it mandatory after that time, to sort of see how it's working? Because I know there's some cities that do it on a more of a voluntary basis. I know it doesn't get you where you want to go as fast as you want to go, but it might be a way of getting everybody up to speed in a more cooperative environment, if you will, and then moving on from there. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I think the 6-month timeline of it being implemented but not enforced for 6 months, so essentially it being voluntary for 6 months, was based on, and Cassie would probably be able to answer that question better, based on an estimate of how long we expected it would take to be able to get the assessors on board, be able to do the education and the outreach, so then we can get those compliance levels once we go into the summer season. So I don't know if there was like really specific information from other communities as to how long it took those communities, but we can definitely look into it.
Oh, that would be my suggestion, is just to see practical implementation. So, and I will agree with you that the newer construction is extremely tight on energy and water use. And it is all of these older homes that are sieves and just waste all of our energy and water. And something needs to be done. And I hate, as somebody who does new construction, I hate it every time they feel like the screws keep turning. I do a lot of work in California, so the Title 24 stuff, it just keeps getting tighter and tighter. And there's not much that we're not really taking all that energy. It's all these older homes. So yes, something has to be done. I just want it to be fair, and I want it to be done in an implementable way that is successful. So
yeah, that's great. We rest assured that we completely share those sentiments. We've been working hard for 2 years to make sure we reach those goals. It is the tough nut to crack. Is our existing housing stock is a tremendous opportunity for energy savings. It's a lot being wasted, and that waste is hurting people's pocketbooks, and that waste is hurting our environment dramatically. So I've been looking at this problem for a long time, and I have not heard of or seen a better tool to implement to make that change that you were talking about. This U.S. Department of Energy Home Energy Score, which is based on the silver platter for the city of Bend. We don't have to invent it. We don't have to come up with it. It exists. And it reaches people at the time, I think statistically, when the most change or investment is made in a house is when it changes hands and it's empty. That's also the time, having done a lot of energy upgrades, that's the cheapest time to do an energy upgrade, is when you're going to do cosmetic changes anyway, or you're going to pull trim, you're going to do things. That's reduces that incremental cost of also adding energy efficiency to it. So it's maybe not the most robust or the most perfect program, but from what I've seen so far, it's sitting there on a silver platter for us to implement. It would be a pity to see it passed up.
Thank you.
So I'm next in line, but I'm the chair, and I'm looking at the clock. And I know they have questions to ask. Peter is no stranger to my questions that I've posed to Cassie and the committee. I do have a couple, but I'm going to go to my left.
Thank you. And I'll be very quick too.
Gee.
I agree with Kathy. I did some homework on the IRA kind of rollout, and it's 12 to 18 months away. So it'd be nice if you could sync something of that together for timing, because again, there's substantial incentives in that program to mandate it. A mandate versus voluntary, that's, no one likes to be mandated, so we have to be sensitive to that, right? The other question, this is kind of from personal experiences, how good is this inspection? We haven't talked about that quite yet, because the house I live in now was a 2-year-old house when I moved into it in 2009. and the front half of the house didn't have insulation in the attic. So I had to go do it myself. And so I get the new construction thing. It's like, well, I think they need to be checked too. But there's so much tech, and I know, Peter, I think you've used a lot of this stuff, that you can just, do this and you can see what's cold, what's warm. I mean, is this going to provide that kind of good information? Because that determines a lot whether a house is cold or not, and how, you don't need much of a gap to make it, all your heat leaking out of it, right? And using your furnace 10 times more than it needs to be. So are you getting that with this program, or is it kind of getting it? Or what are you getting with it?
So I would,
Like if you had a score done to experience it yourself.
I have done years and years of the energy performance score,
Mhm.
which is actually, to Keith's point, it's much more robust.
Mhm.
But we also have to be realistic. I mean, the cost of the $200 cost of this score is already causing enough hackles to go up. So if we required something as robust with blower door testing and ductwork.
Yeah, nothing like that. Just
on
some
every
cool
house.
little
Yeah, so it
gadgets. It's
does-
quick
So my
gadgets.
short answer was, it's what you're describing. Yes, they will get that stuff. Missing insulation is exactly the purpose
It
of
will
this.
go in the attic. I've had
Yeah.
2 done on my house because I
Okay.
was a part of the study. I was part of some research that was happening during COVID of trying to verify the ability to do remote scoring, especially if somebody is making an upgrade and then wanting a repeat score to say, hey, I did these upgrades.
Yeah.
To basically do that verification in person. So I've had 2 scores done on my house. I've seen another one done on another house on the other side of town. So they're up in the attic, they're down in the crawl space, they're checking equipment. So they're seeing gaps in insulation, they're measuring insulation. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's
as robust as I would love. No.
No, yeah, exactly. Well, I was
effective tool. Yes.
I was shocked to see there's, and you could just see where the electrician put stuff too tight to the crawl access space, so the insulator guy didn't go up there.
Yeah.
It was so simple, but it was cool. Yeah, oh no. Yeah, and then one of my other recommendations, and this might be way out of left field, is for new construction, if this city's already hiring staff to do this outreach, why don't they do the inspections on the new homes? Should be a slam dunk. I don't know if that's a quick way to get a lot of data that, and I don't know. I mean, that was an easy thing, if there's already resources there, it was just the face-to-face with the homeowner too and what they're getting. If this is going to be required, people want to know what they're buying, right? Yeah, they're out there, they're giving you a final on a new construction house anyway. So it's like, why wouldn't, I don't know. I mean, if that's separation between government and private, you're taking away business from the private market. I don't know, but there's, but that's a very simple thing. What's that? So anyway, I'm just, if they're already out there, it wouldn't be like, that's what my thought was. How do you consolidate this stuff to what's already being done? Sorry. It's stuff that's already being done. We can fold it in. Anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to your point on the new housing, it's interesting, and Kathy's concern, like, I get it. My 78-year-old mom lives in town here, fits that description you're making very well. So I get it. It's interesting here, everyone kind of looking at their particular lens and their concern, because on Monday we heard, the builders are like, oh, new homes are great code, so we should be exempt. Everyone wants their scenario to be exempt.
Of course,
So
I get that.
hold the line on, like, the value of this is that every house has it. That's why it works. So yes, that was interesting. There's many new house stories, but there's also many great old houses. They're not all terrible at all. They have great bones and people have done this.
Mm-hmm. Matt.
Thank you.
A couple quick things. I also share with Kathy's sentiment and concern. The vast majority of the home sale transactions in Bend are not the low to moderate income level, right? I mean, people are coming in and throwing cash at homes that are over what they're worth. We know that. That's what we've been experiencing. But our voice is for those that are low to moderate. Mm-hmm. And these are the types of homes that we see. These are the types of homes that we live in. They're older homes that need work. And the people that we deal with, that we help, that we support, don't have the financial means. Thus, we do have a fear, or I'm speaking maybe out of line here, but I have the fear of loss in equity and community because they aren't able to take advantage of the services that are 12 to 18 months out.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
There are many programs to improve the efficiency of homes that are already here, right? There are income qualified programs through community action agencies, and through the Energy Trust of Oregon that are specifically targeted for low to moderate income households. The Energy Within Reach program is specifically targeted for LMI households that provides increased incentives for those upgrades. And so you have more incentives already available. We're just talking about like there's even more examples further down the line that'll stack on top.
Right. But I mean, you got windows, you got to get replaced, you got insulation, you got hot water heaters, stuff like that. I mean, that's going to come at a cost to some of these people, regardless of if there's incentive or not right now. So these are the concerns that we're voicing right now, which leads into there are communities across the nation who have implemented mandates on these home efficiency scores. And then there are some that have recommendations on them. Do we have data that drives that shows that these communities that have mandated the scores have actually helped lower their greenhouse emissions and impact? Is there data out there that says by the time we've mandated it until now, we've actually had an improvement on environmental impact of our community? Is that number out, versus those that have just put in the recommendation? Like, does the mandate help, or is it just?
From what I know, the studies that looked at the difference between, there's multiple variables that were brought up. So there's the score having an impact on measures taken on the house, improvements that are made. And then there's also the whether something is mandatory or not, and kind of the impact of those three. The only study that I know that's looked at the difference between mandatory and non-mandatory when comparing against their research criteria was the Berkeley National Lab study, which was looking at mortgage performance and sale price. And so in that analysis, all of the assumptions or all of the conclusions that were on that slide in the presentation around mortgage performance and housing sale price were only found when there was a mandatory program, and were not found to be statistically significant when there was not a mandatory program.
Why is that?
Why is that? Because in order to have, I think the assumption is that until you have it, in order to have the actual market impact, it has to be universally available. Otherwise, there's the assumption is that the people that might choose to score would skew to be just higher performing scores. Self-interest, you might choose to do that. But I think likely it's just the availability of scores. Because realistically, you're looking at houses that are outside of the mandated area as well. And so, if you're in Portland, you might be looking in Portland, you might be looking out of city limits. So you might be looking at houses that don't have scores too. So there's some pressure there. But I think that was the assumption.
And the sales price in that study, were the sales prices higher or were they lower? Or
yeah, so an improvement in the score of 1 was equated to a 0.5% increase in sale price in the study for the mandatory.
Oh, I thought, okay, I mixed something up with the interest rate or something.
Yeah. And then I think, the interest rate was mortgage performance. So it was showing that
it was a higher default level without the mandate.
But it was that higher performing homes on the 1 to 10 scale did better on their mortgage. They had a lower default rate.
Okay.
But they also had higher sales price.
We'll share this thing.
If we can do that later, yeah.
And had a higher sales price, yes.
So
it makes it more expensive.
Well, it's interesting.
In the price.
Some people are concerned that their lower score makes it cheaper, and then other people are concerned that a higher score makes it more expensive.
Right. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. Yeah.
So we've heard, people chatting with us about those scenarios.
I would love to see that study personally.
Yeah.
Because, I see the, half point increase in price or 0.5% increase in price if it's a 1 point score higher. I would like to see the inverse of that if that study has been impacted, because my real fear lies with some of these communities that are embedded within Bend, that are older homes that are going to score lower, and if they're going to have a negative impact on their price. But circling back, there really hasn't been any, or maybe there just hasn't been enough time, data to show that a mandated home energy score has impacted in a positive way a city's greenhouse gas emissions.
So the city of Eugene had a program for years that was voluntary, and they partnered with the University of Oregon with the college students, and they actually did tests for landlords and owners. And they, I think it was 6 years worth of work, and they were able to, they obtained about 700 scores. So they were able to measure that from that.
Yeah.
And that was all a voluntary program. So Eugene was able
Did it reduce the amount of greenhouse gas
Okay.
emissions?
in their report. Yeah.
Yeah, I think something else too. I read the Portland's write-up and an Austin study they referenced in there that talked about there was a premium put on efficient homes. So I think it's not going out and testing to make sure that the environment's greener. It's incentivizing people to put more efficient stuff in their homes so that they can get a better price.
I wouldn't even say incentivizing, I would say.
Or maybe that's
Kind of my workaround with that.
Yeah.
So educating and helping people understand what they are buying and what they're actually getting, and the decision they choose to make is up to them. But doing a lot of the energy work in the built environment, simply what we do know is that providing information alone can change people's behaviors on energy use. If you're showing like graph of their house's energy monitor, you do nothing different. They see it every day. They reduce their energy use, and that's with no changes. So we also know in Bend that based on our
no.
Wife's use much anymore. They use a lot, but I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So in Bend, so when we did so our group came on after the CCAP was finished, and we were kind of roped into helping implement it. But what we do know in Bend is that of our full greenhouse gas emissions, our built environment is 2/3 of that is operating our built environment. So our heating, our cooling, our appliances, everything. So energy efficiency, improving our energy efficiency will reduce our amount of greenhouse gas emissions by using less energy. So I am, believe it or not, a big fan of market capitalist solutions. So providing people with energy and letting them make their decisions. So we don't want to force people to make those changes. No one has to change their windows. Changing windows is one of the least longest returns you can do on your house. You can blow in insulation for a few $100 in the roof and have a huge impact.
Yeah, so it's the cheapest.
So just simple little things like that, helping people move forward. If you decide, hey, I do want to do a little something, well, energy score says, hey, here's your quickest ROI is insulation in your attic, or maybe your walls, depending on your house, as opposed to people think solar panels or they think windows. And those are huge, long paybacks. Like that's not, if you can, wonderful, but if you can't, no. But providing that information is what I think is the power of this. And I mean, the study, I'm glad they did it. It's robust. We'll share it so you can read the group. It was 30,000 homes in communities with and without. And it's kind of you don't get the market adoption if it's voluntary. You get everyone who has a good score will go get it, and everyone is like, oh, my house is old or my house is leaky. They're not going to go get it. So if we actually want to have action, that's the reason it's voluntary. And I'm fully aware it's controversial, and that's okay. But if we're looking at what did the results say, making it on every house gets the results.
I have litany of questions, but yeah, we're good.
Joanna, you've been so patient.
Oh, I don't have any questions. Just I share some of the same concerns around equity, but I think that's been pretty well voiced.
If we have
Joanna.
if we have additional feedback or ideas, can we send them over?
Can we send them to Lynn?
Our Lynn is Cassie, so.
I was gonna say, sorry, I should have sat on this side so I didn't have to keep running back and forth, but I guess I'm getting my steps in despite looking at a screen all day. If you all have additional questions, I would suggest that those come directly to me, not in any reply all format, so that we don't trigger public meeting rules. And then I will pass those on to Cassie to disseminate to you all, if that's okay. I just wrote her an email and was like, one of us might owe these two a beer after this session. You guys are doing awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, up to you. Up to you all how long you continue. Staff is here for as long as you would like us, but did want to offer that up, that certainly I'm happy to work through Cassie, and just email me directly if that's okay. I'll compile everything in the next few days and ship that off, and we'll see what we can get. I know.
Lynn, while you're standing up there, Ian has his hand raised. Well, on one screen he does. Oh, there he is.
I was just going to note that I need to excuse myself. I'm at time. I need to move on to another engagement.
Bye.
I'm about there. I've got a first time homebuyer meeting in 15 minutes. So I'm in the lending. So the data. Yeah.
You need to do one thing fast, but you guys are, thank you for your time and your input. You'll be hearing more from us.
Really appreciate you being here and listening to us.
Thank you.
Sorry, it wasn't early.
It wouldn't have mattered.
Remember your water. Thank you, committee. We did go a little long. So Rachel, do you want to jump into?
In August, you all have presentations to amend our 2023 annual action plan. We finally got those into the plan. I have sent out those amendments for you to review. All we need from you today is a recommendation to send on to council for approval.
I move to recommend council approval for the proposed 2022-23 CDBG amended annual action plan.
Second. I knew that was going to be hard. We have a motion and a second. Any other additional questions?
Where's Guinness?
All right, let's go to a vote. In favor of the motion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Ian had to leave, but okay.
And then I'm going to be sending you all the links to your neighborly review.
Yay!
I need you to all have those scores into neighborly no later than Friday, December 4th.
Oof. Okay.
No problem.
It's just for the 4 proposals you heard today.
Oh.
Yeah, you got time.
Okay. I'm already. Yeah, I'm good.
Clarify, do we have
Dude.
I'm already gone next week. I'm not going to have access to anything.
Oh, that's
next
right.
week.
You're on vacation.
also have to go for services?
She'll be working late tonight.
Jeez. Did you see that? She kind of slapped down her little thing.
Drive a
there.
hard bargain.
I know.
All right, Heather's our next chair. No, just kidding. Are you okay with me jumping into staff report? So very, very quickly, we have TSP amendments, the Transportation System Plan at Planning Commission on Monday. You all do not have to volunteer, but if anybody wants to go and represent AHAC at that, please just let me know. COIC, we talked about stipend cards from this point forward are getting mailed to you. So those of you who signed into the stipend card program will have those mailed from this point forward. We're trying to streamline and just not make it as crazy for everybody. And then up to you all, if you'd like to have a member go to council to talk about the home energy score for first reading. That is not mandatory at all. It's totally up to you in that December meeting. So
they're not going to do a work session with the new date of that. Were you in the room, Counselor?
That's my understanding, is that they're going right to first reading. So at that point, there will be opportunity for public comment. I think if you all really feel strongly about any of these points or want to sort of come forward as a group, that would be your chance to provide AHAC's feeling on this.
Maybe after you gather additional information from us, and then we can review it again and see.
Okay.
How does that sound?
That sounds great. I think what I would love from you all is to then give permission as a group to Cindy or to a delegate to go forth and do that, if that's okay. The only challenge is we have to avoid the public meeting thing, which means there's no discussion via email without that being noticed. So it just means that I'll work directly with Cindy on whatever that looks like, if that's okay.
Friday City Shoots, let's do it.
Okay. And then
Can we do a letter as well?
Yeah,
that's fine.
It would be better to authorize Cindy to put a letter together based on the comments that she heard from us today of our concerns. Would that be?
Absolutely. I'd love to see kind of head nods to make sure we have a majority in favor of that, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then then I will work with Cindy on that. Amy has a little bit more. She has a report that we didn't get to, so she's going to pass that out. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I have 15 seconds? Yeah, please.
Yeah. I was going to thank you for staying late.
Oh,
It's right. Thank you all. Oh,
Yes,
thank
congratulations.
you.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. So right now I can't even remember why Jason Crop came up earlier, but Jason Crop came up earlier.
I mentioned.
Yeah, the city of Bend has a lobbyist, and every 2 years we send our lobbyists to Salem with specific instructions about what to support. And we will be setting those legislative priorities next month largely. So if you would like to have an input on that, you can email me, you can email Lynn. If you all want to somehow come together and say, AHAC, all of us are concerned about one thing, I'm sure Lynn can help you figure out how to do that legally. But I just want you to know there's an opportunity for you to get your voices in for what the city is advocating for next legislative session. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Barb.
Yeah.
It's about the prevailing wage issue.
That's what it was. Thank you.
And just so you know, I mean, I am sort of a direct liaison to that
Mhm.
lobbyist, and so the things that you discuss stay in my brain some of the time. And I do my best to pass that along sort of to leadership, make sure that your voices are part of our larger state strategy. So, yeah, just so you know, there is that feedback loop, but definitely happy to open that up. And we can even do a session maybe later with our lobbyist potentially, or figure out how that looks.
Great.
Super, super fast. So we have everything written out. It's our first quarterly report on the Navigation Center.
Great.
Which opened officially July 1. And so we're looking at that first quarter. It's got the service numbers as well as folks that have transitioned to more permanent housing. They're at 36 in those first 3 months, which is impressive. And you also have I wanted to call attention to all of the partners that the navigation has brought in to really provide that service hub. That's the intent under the legislation. So there's just a couple of folks working in that building and trying to move individuals and families into more permanent housing. So it's kind of a list of who's who.
Great.
So if you have any questions about the report, and we can certainly send it out electronically, I will let everybody know that with the weather change, that 92% that they've been at as far as occupancy has skyrocketed. They are over capacity. They're considering for the first time that they may have to turn people away because they're up to 127 last Wednesday. And so the building just isn't built for that.
Right.
And so we need to find other solutions within the community to meet that need. It's our only low barrier shelter. Yes.
This is a subject for another day, but I'm thinking about the additional dollars and other discussions we've had about, just we do not, even with all of the new beds that have become available, we still have a sizable gap. So is it time to maybe think about really focusing on shelter beds until we get the quantity that we need? I don't know, but just.
That's for next meeting.
For next meeting.
That's for next Friday's meeting.
Well, when we deliver, I mean,
The shoots.
So feel free to shoot me any questions. This is still kind of in a draft form. So if you have feedback, that would be terrific. And if not, we can move forward. So thank you very much.
Great.
Question about that graph, the overnight shelter occupancy.
Yes.
Is the 3,000, is it taking into account 30 days, 100 beds, 3,000? Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure I understood it. Thank you.
And when they built their budget, it was 80 beds. So they already jumped up right away to 100. And
okay,
cool. 127 on Wednesday.
Thank you.
All right. Is that everything, staff report? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Next meeting is December.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
11th.
11th.
Yes. Double check.
So the 11th is a weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for staying late.
On vacation.
Even camping.
Amy, are you still there?